Hi, and welcome to Living My Faith, the show where we spotlight those individuals that are really living their faith. I'm your host, James Fenimore, and today we've got a really special guest for you. Joining me is Shayla Kuykendall. Shayla, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. How
Oh,
are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you so much for joining us today. So, we start this show with one simple question. How are you living your faith?
I would say I am living my faith one day at a time and by God's grace. And it's funny that you asked me that because I feel like that's been my motto this entire year. I recently made the decision to transition out of being a journalism teacher after teaching for 3 years. And that is something I would tell people almost every day when they would ask, "How are you?" I'm like, I'm great, but taking it one day at a time by God's grace. And I feel like it's because also God is having me in a season to rely fully on Him. And I see it with even my brand today. When I made the decision to transition from Intellectual Beats being a blog to a podcast, there was this period of stillness because of the pandemic. And then it was like, so God, where do I go from here? And so that having this total reliance on God when it's almost like you have to pause because like you're stepping into the unknown. My faith has been built so strongly through that I can sit here even today knowing that though I'm transitioning out of a job, again walking into the unknown, I know God is with me because I know He provided in past seasons. And so yeah, as long as His grace is with me, it's like I know I can walk into whatever next chapter as long as I do so fully relying on Him.
Sheila, I want to explore what you just said because I know there are a lot of people that have experienced this, but they also experience the other side of this, right? The unknown, the anxiety, the nervousness, the sweaty palms. Like you're in a transition period in your life. And for some people, that might be a really nerve-wracking experience. But when you're a follower of Christ and you're, you know, believing in Him and you're at your knees just praying to Him, there's a calmness about us. There's a joy in that sometimes. Even there's we know there's a purpose behind it and an intentionality to it. And I'm just wondering, have you ever experienced the other side of that? And if so, how much greater does that make this season you're in now and this feeling that you currently have?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because in the past, I remember this time where I did resign from a job, not knowing what was next, but I did so because I felt God saying in my spirit, Shayla, it's time. And I was like, I understand that, God, but I don't even know where to go next. Like you always hear, you don't leave one job before you have another one lined up. But here it is, God asking me to do something that was the complete opposite. So that one day I resigned from my job. The very next day, God provided an open door. And it led me into actually being a teacher. And to this day, I sit here saying, God, like, first off, if I would have known maybe that's what it would have taken, just me going into complete obedience, maybe I would have done some other things in the past the same way where I just walk away knowing God has me. But yeah, getting to the other side, it's like it helps you to know that God is truly the orchestrator, lining every single thing up for your good to thrust you into your ultimate destiny.
Yep.
And so I'll say this also. One thing my mother also told me before is don't doubt God. And that was because even when I started Intellectual Beats, before it really started thriving, I almost shut it all the way down. And that was because I felt like, God, I don't have a blueprint. No one has done this before me. I don't know who to go to. I'm trying to sift through and figure all this out. I don't know where to go from here. But when she said, don't doubt God, it really convicted me. And I said, you know what? If I am speaking against whatever vision I feel like God has told me to like build or walk into, then I'm doubting Him. So it's like if you can trust that God, He said to move or to shift or act, if you walk in that, when you finally start walking into whatever it is, you begin to realize, okay, this is all in accordance with the purpose that He has already designed, for me before I was even born.
That's beautiful. Don't doubt God. Amen. Um, Intellectual beats. You've mentioned it a couple times. I want to make sure our audience really understands what that is. So why don't you explain it?
So, Intellectual Beats is all about elevating conversations. When I first started it, I wanted it to be like similar to my background in journalism So I started sharing human interest stories of those in my community or even outside of my community who were doing these extraordinary things. So it was a lot of entrepreneurs, it was a lot of authors. And I started realizing people were really starting to love hearing these like relatable stories. So much so that, yeah, in 2019, I started it. We had a pause due to the pandemic. And then by 2022, I said, let's go ahead and expand this into a podcast. And so the conversations became more dynamic where I'm also sharing. But then I started realizing people were also saying, hey, Shayla, can you share your story also, your testimony? And so it's like, it's still these human interest stories, but it's also now taking even different topics happening in society and culture and building on those and providing like a spiritual element to it. And so I think my faith-based audience really can really glean from that.
So you went from a blog to a podcast, and now we got to speak in right before the show. You also now have a YouTube channel as well, correct?
Absolutely, yes. It's amazing what God has done with that because I recently became a YouTube partner back in November of 25. And so I describe that as an act of obedience because one thing about podcasting, I love to be in front of the camera with my microphone so I can sound more professional. But God was also having me in a season of if I just give you a word, I need you to pick up your phone and just record something. And so that helped me to build the YouTube channel into organic content, but also some more formal content with the podcast. And so I describe it as one act of obedience that helped to kind of put me where I am today, even with that channel.
That's amazing. Well, Shayla, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. This has been such a treat. I want you to know all your information is going to be right below this video. So anybody who wants to check out the blog, the podcast, or visit you on YouTube, all that information will be right below here. But Shayla, it's been a real treat. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with our audience.
Thank you for having me.
Have a blessed day. On behalf of Shayla, I'm James Fenimore. This has been Living My Faith, and we can't wait to see you next time.